Alexander with the Entrepreneurship Law Firm, and this is the Better Business Blog. Today we're here with Pete McAlindon, Dr. Pete McAlindon of Blue Orb Inc., and we're going to talk about some things that has made his company successful. So to give you an idea, how did the idea for the Orbitouch come about? You know, when did you kind of conceive of this, and how did it come to the product that we can see today?
Sure. Well, actually, I was in graduate school, and I was working on a lot of different research papers. I was a programmer in one of the labs there at UCF, and noticed that my fingers were getting numb after typing 12 hours a day. And so I called my father, who was a general surgeon, and I asked him what he thought it was, and he said, "You may have the beginnings of carpal tunnel syndrome, and that it's a pretty nasty thing to have if you want to continue to use your hands." So I thought, well, I need to do this work. I'd hate to graduate and not have a job using a computer, because that's what I'm trained to do. So the idea was born to develop a computer keyboard that totally eliminates finger motion and wrist motion. And this is how it works. It has two domes that slide into 8 directions each. And what you do is you match the character and the character's color on this dome with the character's color on this dome. So for example, to type the letter O, which is in blue here, I move this dome straight up. It doesn't have to be at the character, just at the zone. And then when I move this dome to the blue color, those two motions, let me put my hands on there to show you, these two motions now type the letter O. It doesn't matter which dome moves first, timing doesn't matter. So for people, again, that don't have full use of their hands, the Orbitouch keyless keyboard allows them to stay connected to a computer. Well, I graduated, wrote a grant from the research that I had done, submitted that to the National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research Program, and received funding.
So an SBIR grant?
An SBIR grant, that's correct. And received phase 1, phase 2, and phase 2B.
So phase 1 would be the development of the actual underlying technology?
That's correct.
And phase 2 is?
More product development, more in-depth testing. Phase 1 is a 6-month effort. At the time that I applied, it was $75,000 for the 6 months of effort to really understand the merit of the technology. And then phase 2, which is over the course of 2 years at $400,000, is more for the real development of it and the real more in-depth testing of it.
And then the follow-on after the phase 2, what was that?
Yeah, but then the phase 2B, which is a matching fund through the National Science Foundation. So any money that I raised from investors, the National Science Foundation would match up to $200,000.
So that started you on the course of raising money for the company?
That's correct.
So how did that go?
Initially, it was not much fun at all, because I did not know much about raising angel capital or even running a business. Right? I was a newly minted doctorate, and I had any number of things that I had to learn about running the business, raising capital, and so on. And if you don't speak the language of angel investing or investment in general in business, it's you got to learn very quickly to be successful.
So what was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome?
Well, the biggest hurdle is obviously getting through it as quickly as you can, because you can't slow down the development of your product, right, or your business. If you have an idea you want to pursue, you can't have big financial gaps, because you need financial resource to grow your business. So it was really just learning the language, getting to know some people, and talking to them about the idea that I had.
Okay, so getting to know some people, what was the first step you took to get to know some people?
Yeah, it's interesting, because you can't go up to a stranger and ask for a few $100,000 to help you get your company started. So you have to work your networks of people that would be interested in helping you build your business. And in Winter Park, I had heard of this gentleman who was retired, newly retired, lived on Park Avenue, had an interest in helping people with disabilities. And through a friend, I asked her to connect me to him, just for a cup of coffee, just to see what he thought of the business. And actually, at that point too, I was more interested in having him as a mentor than an angel investor.
So you didn't approach him right out of the box for money, but you approached him to help you move the business along.
That's correct. I approached him for helping me understand the finance language that was necessary to raise capital, build a business where it was investable, and things of that nature.
And then he put you in touch with people?
The first angel was the most difficult, because once you have buy-in, it makes it easier for other angels. You can be introduced to other angels by that one angel, and so on. So the network, my angel network, just kept building from that perspective. Yes. But it really did help that we had the National Science Foundation matching grant, had a lot of research, I had a prototype, and I had the definition of the very next steps that we need to take. That's why he invested. I had a really, really concrete plan with milestones. And he didn't put in all the money I asked for. He put it in a little bit at a time. So he said, what's the next step? I said, it's a $30,000 step to get the engineering design of the product to a point where we can begin to manufacture it. And that's when he wrote his first check. And most of the C investors also invested in A and B. So, we've picked up a few along each round, but for the most part, their investors have been very fortunate that way. Have stayed with the company because they see growth. And what I learned early on is when you set a bunch of milestones and you ask investors to invest at them kind of one at a time, that's a lot better than, hey, I need $3 million, we're going to burn through it in a couple of years, and here's what we're going to do. It's like, that's a lot of money to be asking, especially these days, for something that may or may not work.
With the hindsight of 2020, what would you say was the biggest mistake you made as an entrepreneur?
Well, it's interesting because it's like I said, hindsight's always 2020. I would say the biggest mistake is not staying focused on your product and selling it, right? Because the world really dictates to you how successful anything you do is going to be. So finding the right partners early and often, driving that awareness, continuing to get feedback from your end users, improving the product and so on. Early on we spent so much time on the intellectual property, and had we spent it on the products that we had at the time, or at least the initial product, I think we would have probably had greater market impact, been further along financially than where we were for several years and so on.
I would imagine that's a common mistake that technologists make, is that the focus is on the intellectual property and how compelling the intellectual property is. Mm-hmm. But the reality is the marketplace is going to determine whether your product's successful or not.
That's absolutely right.
And when you were talking with your investors, what value did they give the patents? Did they come up with a specific number?
No, they didn't. They knew that more patents is better, right? So, it's
better in the context of what? When you say
just company value. If you patents are kind of really at the end of the day, what's the company's value? It's cash flow and intellectual property.
And the intellectual property, in the sense of it is a barrier to entry, so others can't come in and just dupe what you've done.
That's exactly right.
And lay out that's in cash. You were open to coaching?
Oh yes. That's one thing that I learned early on. Great ideas come from all over the place, and you have to be open, you have to be flexible to different points of view, being able to be coached and actually stepping up and doing the homework that's requested of you. We have 5 external members of the board, or on our board. We have 55 angel investors in our company. Those 5 have very close relationships with the other 50. So when I communicate to the board, and certainly investors individually, word gets around fairly quickly on how the company's progressing, how it's doing, and so on. So having a great board that's close to the other investors really helps a lot.
That's essential.
Yes, it is. I think one hugely important aspect about being an entrepreneur is talking to other entrepreneurs, right? Because a lot of people will think you're crazy, or your idea is crazy, or that's been done, it's too big of a risk, why go after it? Because you have something that's burning inside of you that you want to pursue. And there are so many naysayers, and the world's kind of against you and so on. So I would suggest that, and call me, right? If you please attach my information to the end of this video. Email me, call me, whatever you want to do. But it's so important that you become part of the network. And as you take from it, give back to it. And that's really what helps all of our companies grow. That's really the success of what I would call entrepreneurship here in Central Florida.
You were doing some work on an accelerator. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. It was really my teaching at Rollins and understanding that program a lot better that really brought the idea of Techstars to Central Florida. I had heard about Techstars, which is a Boulder-based accelerator for companies, right? So in my own case, you have a product, you have an idea, angel capital, it's available, but how do you fill the void, right? How do you get your company up and running today? And today you have to build your company much more quickly than I had to 10 years ago, right? It's just kind of the market demand, if you will. And what Techstars does is help you get through your ideas and your business opportunity much more quickly than if you didn't have them. So what Techstars is a program. Again, it's an accelerator that brings in mentors, it brings in resources, some financial. Most of it is mentor to help build your business plan, get you connected to industry partners, and do all those things to really help you ramp up your company. And Techstars is exciting because it's affiliated with Rollins, right? So there's the professor part of it, the student aspect of it, and then it lives and breathes on its own because it can bring in other deals from anywhere in the world, really, that the Techstars network exists. So Techstars will, it's beginning to happen here in Central Florida. It's part of the Techstars network. So it'll have its own name, and it'll say underneath part of the Techstars network. So really what it does is it networks us into the success that Boulder has had, the new programs in New York, Boston, and Seattle.
So when you look at an accelerator versus an incubator, can you tell me how those two differ?
Yeah, in my mind, they're two sides of the same coin. An incubator is a great place to learn how to build a business, get started with everything. But once the incubation is done and it's time to get out to the marketplace, wrap yourself with mentors that are already out in industry, go out and raise the angel capital that you need. That's where the accelerator comes in.
So can you tell me what other components there are to the Orlando entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Sure. There are a lot of great programs in Central Florida. GrowFL is a great program that helps second stage companies grow. The CEO Nexus, which brings together second stage CEOs once a month to talk about the issues that they have and so on. And so really it begins to leverage the local knowledge of CEOs, primarily in second stage, some first stage now brought in, but it really helps when you can compare notes to other CEOs. So both the CEO Nexus and GrowFL help with that. And there are a lot of the UCF Venture Lab is a great place for students. The Rollins Center for Advanced Entrepreneurship, great for Rollins students, right? So we're trying to bring, just continue to tighten the ecosystem. So people know about other people's efforts, you can learn from them, they can learn from you, and that's really what begins to grow in earnest the entrepreneurial community.